The Honest Money podcast is brought to you by Prescient Investment Management. We consider everything to give you the advantage. It's the future of investing. Prescient Investment Management is an authorized FSP.
Welcome to Honest Money. I'm Warren Ingram.
This is Pieter Villiers.
This is the last episode in our series on mid-stage or mid-career people. And today we're going to talk about what happens when something sad happens, when one of your parents dies and you get an inheritance. I'm hoping that it's sad, that it's not that you're not rejoicing that your parents have died, but this is a reality. We are in a situation where people who are in their 40s, might start losing their parents, and if their parents have accumulated capital, the likelihood is that you can inherit some or potentially a lot of money. And it's a tricky one for a lot of people. It's not something that they necessarily think about, and then it might be the most money that they've ever seen in their lives at once. And making good decisions in a situation like this is obviously necessary, but it's not as easy as you think. It's not like you just win the lotto and great, everything's done and life will be good. Often there are quite tragic consequences to this if it's not handled well. So it is a very nice topic, and I think there is, as you said before we started the recording, there's a lot that we can talk about here. So maybe from your perspective, if that happens, so someone kind of walks in and says to you, parents have died and we're going to inherit some money, what do you tell them first?
Yeah, it's I think with money, there's always the two components to it. There's the quantifiable aspect, how much are we talking about? That's one thing that we can see, but there's also the emotional side of it. So where does this money come from, and what had to happen for this to land in our laps? Because the reason why I'm saying that is if it's a large sum and we need to decide what to do with that, the emotional connection we have with that will, to a large extent, dictate how we approach it. As a quick example, let's say, to keep things very simple, you take the full amount and you just pour it into the markets, 100% offshore equity. Tomorrow, the markets drop by 30%. Now you, from the perspective of the person inheriting that, is losing 30% of that money that you inherited with the emotional connection you had to the person that provided it for you. That's going to hit much harder than someone else that won the lotto maybe. So we need to understand that psychological perspective first, and in order to dig further into that, you need to understand the situation of where you are currently at in your life. So I think there's kind of two ways to approach it, or you have to combine those two actually to get to the outcome. Is the quantifiable. Okay, so what are the theoretical right answer? You've got debt. Okay, let's maybe pay that off. You don't have emergency fund. Let's top that up. Let's invest it for different goals. Short-term, medium, long-term goals, retirement, create a portfolio that's appropriate to that. I think that's the easy part. That's what we are trained to do as planners, is to run the numbers and to give advice. But it's still that emotional connection we have to it, and first need to understand the person behind the money to understand then what to do with that lump sum. So the conversation for me would always just start with taking a couple of steps back and just understanding where this money is coming from, and what connection do we have with this, and that will then help us to decide what the next steps are.
I think it's a fantastic point. I've been in conversations where the family's sitting with huge debt, and the debt is putting them under huge strain, and then one of the two people inherits significant money, and they don't do anything with the money because of this emotional thing. And from the outside, I look at it and it's such an obvious thing. You've got 5 million rand worth of debt. You inherited 4.5 million rand. The family would really benefit from not having this debt burden. And so, without asking the question about where did it come from and what's the purpose, you don't get to that core problem, and you don't solve it. So what happens is they get stuck and they just move in a circle, not knowing what to do. So I think when you're in that situation, you have inherited. It's number one, as you say, just stop and go, okay, what was the plan? If it was the grandparents, and the grandparents always valued education, and you've got young children, you might say, well, I need to identify a portion of this money that has to get set aside for our children's education. That will that's planting the tree, right? The tree of knowledge. And so there's meaning and purpose to that. Or, they hated the banks and, they didn't ever want to deal with the man. So, then maybe they're very happy that you settle your debts. And so I think, and also that if it comes from, your own parent and your parents, your mom or your dad died and you want to leave a legacy, being clear about that, to say, this is, this capital has to fulfill a purpose, and it's not just about a rand or a cent. And again, I think, you often say that it's not an all or nothing. So there's no harm in saying, well, I'm going to allocate some money to education. I'm going to allocate some money to a legacy of some other description, but I'm also going to give the family a bit of breathing room. If we are in a difficult financial position, settling a credit card or a personal loan or overdraft or whatever it is, could make a huge difference. So it's important because we can't say to you, don't be irrational about this. Whatever the numbers say, that's what you must do. What we know very well about money is money has to align with your values and your purpose. And so if it does, things tend to work out better. And if it doesn't, things tend to work out badly, or we get stuck and we just don't get progress. So I didn't think you were going to say that, Pieter. It's a great answer. I like that. But I also think it's okay to do things with time.
Yeah.
So one thing that happens when people get a lump sum is they feel pressure. We've got money, must do something, and surely you don't want the money sitting in a current account earning very little interest and doing nothing. So one of the things I often say to people is, take the money, park it in a money market account or money market unit trust away from your banking profile, just from a safety point of view. I think that makes sense. And then take some time and have conversations. If you're married, have conversations with your spouse about, what do we think, what is important. Take the time to grieve a little bit because you might not make the best decision when you're distraught.
Yeah.
You've lost someone that's important to you. I hope that you're distraught, actually. And so that you allow yourself to go through that process. When you get through some of the grieving, then you get into a space where you can start to think. But gee, that pressure of got to do things, got to arrange funerals, got to do all this stuff, and got to do something with the money like that, that's not a good space to be, to do things intelligently for the best use of yourself and your family for 2 or 3 decades. So taking, even if it's taking a year to make decisions that could have a 30-year impact, I would view that as another form of investment.
Absolutely. It's almost like buying a house. You're not just going to go into Property24 and scroll down, I want this one, and drive there and buy the house. It's a process. You have to think about, what purpose does this house need to play in our life and our family, and where does it need to be, and how much is it costing us, and can we afford it? So it takes time to make a big purchase. So if you receive a large sum of inheritance, take time to process it as well. And that's why I always say, there's the technical, the theoretical answer to this. And if we say we put it in the money market, we're going to earn interest, but then we're going to pay a lot of taxes as well. That's true. That's okay. Because what's most important is that you make an informed decision and you spend time to really map out what this money, what purpose it plays. And if you pay a bit more taxes for the short term, it's okay. It's all right. I won't necessarily say keep it there forever, because then what most often happens is that keep it in the bank, keep it in a interest-bearing account. And then 10 years later, that most of that money would have been eroded by inflation. So we need a plan.
Yeah.
Eventually, we need to have a clear strategy of how do we deploy this in the best ways possible. But because it's such an emotional thing, you need time. You need to allow yourself time to process it. And I think the other thing that I sometimes see is guilt. People actually feel guilty when they inherit money, because for some, and money is a weird thing. It just does that. It's like, okay, I've got all this money. I don't know what to do with it. I didn't really work for this, and someone had to pass away for me to have this. And then they almost don't want to do anything with it. They just almost want to forget about it, because just the thought of having to think about it is already scary. So when we do get clarity on what this money, how it could serve us and not us them, how money can play a role in our lives, then it could be a good point to have a strategy in place to then say, okay, once I'm clear-minded and I can think rationally, right, what plan do we have with this? And sometimes, I mean, one of the easier ways to get rid of that guilt is to take a portion of that and give it away. Give it to a charity or put it somewhere where you know it can make a massive impact, because that will help you also feel a bit more fulfilled. I think that's the whole point of money is not to just hoard it and to keep it somewhere, for it to gather dust. It's to make an impact. So if you're in that situation where you feel guilty, that might be a component of that lump sum that could be used, whether it's the person that passed away, something they were passionate about, or maybe you, where you feel like this. I mean, there's always good to be done in the world.
Yeah. And I think, don't be afraid to go and spend a bit of time with a grief counselor.
Yeah.
Like going through this is a process. And so, feeling guilty, I mean, it's a completely human thing, and that's fine. But at the same time, you can't feel guilty and get stuck. So deal with the grief and actually address it as a thing. Like we're okay to go to the doctor, when we cut our leg and we need stitches. Now we've had like a major life event, and then we're not okay to talk to someone about it. So I would say to you, that's not right. You should talk to someone. So let's just say, we've always got to give people some pointers as well, some practical stuff. Otherwise, they're just going to say you and I are waffling here. So I mean, I do think when you form that strategy. So assuming that you've processed the emotions, you've allocated some money, potentially to either a charitable cause, or it was education for the grandchildren, whatever the deal is, and there is money left over. I know you love Maslow's hierarchy. So for me, in this instance, the things that I would, if there's no emotion attached to it, I would want to buy as much breathing room as possible. And that means you settle your credit cards, your personal loans, your overdrafts. If there's still money left over, you settle the car debt. If there's still money left over, then you look at the bond, making at least a dent in the bond. I mean, we can debate whether you should settle the whole bond. That's a question. But I think you definitely want to take care of the short-term debts and the car debt, because nothing grows that fast. And then you can make a different decision. So then you can say, well, we've got a mortgage, we've got some savings, some investments, but what's important to us as a couple or as a family? And then you might say, well, actually, yes, we want to pre-fund our children's university, or we want to pre-fund high school. Then you've got a little bit more clarity and purpose around the capital, especially if it was money you never anticipated earning. So if you knew it wasn't coming and now all of a sudden it's here, and you've got a kind of a retirement plan on track, then you could say, well, it will help everybody, including my children, if I can fund their education. Great, well done. That's a burden off everybody and a peace of mind factor. Or you might say, we're doing okay looking after all of this, but what we haven't done is we haven't funded our own retirement adequately. Or we need a bit more overseas just to get a bit more balance and a bit of kind of country peace of mind. But I think that those are things that you do, after the debt issue. I think it's one of those things. What I wouldn't do, and that's what happens when people win the lotto, is they take money and they blow it.
Yes.
You somehow convince yourself that your great grandparents who gave you the money really would have been thrilled if you'd gone on a 6-month surfing safari to Bali and you've never been surfing before. Like, no, that's that. You deal with your grief. Get some priorities. We're talking to people that are, in their 30s, 40s, and maybe even 50s, and you've got some time to kind of fix your financial kind of gaps, but not that much time that you can treat yourself like a child. You're not a child. You're adulting full time here. So I think to me, inheritances are not. It's just not like a windfall. That's not money that you just blow. I mean, I think then the guilt will kick in and all of that.
Yeah.
So I don't like it when people do that. I love the idea of people making a cause donation like that, because it's giving is like the most rewarding thing you can do. Yeah. But just blowing money on stupid stuff, like a car that has no value in 10 years time or whatever it is. I mean, I'm dissing surfing in Bali. Maybe it's great. I don't know. But experiences are fine. Taking your family or doing something like that is okay. But it should be a small proportion. That shouldn't be like what you do with the bulk of it.
It all comes down to you have to sit down and go and map out what's most important, what's going to add value to your life. And is if from a financial perspective, I agree with all your points. Bad debt first, top up emergency fund. If you short on your own retirement, make lump sum contributions to that. That compound growth on that would be great. Any short, medium, long term goals. Each education is a big one. So if you can pre-fund that, even like high school fees, if they're still young, you can even start saving for that, because then you can pay that like once a year and save a little bit at that point. And then, yeah, maybe even if there's money left over, to also enjoy a portion of that, to say, right, we've really ticked all the boxes, we've plugged all the holes, we still have a portion. Let's go on a holiday as a family, and let's celebrate, this person's life. Maybe or do some sort of say like an event that you can, in a nice way, remember the impact they had, maybe in that space. Or if it's a donation, I think that's probably the best. I think Dave Ramsey says this a lot. The most joy you get out of money is not when you earn money or when you spend money. It's when you give. And just the fact of being able to give a portion, I think that's already going to have a massive impact on you. But if we do get a bit more,
I just want to say, I know what you'll do is you might end up now going and buying like a 5-year-old car just to reward yourself.
yeah, a new one, 5 years, after the depreciation curve. Actually, it's a 3-year-old.
Okay.
5-year one is later. So I think maybe to just touch on some of the technical stuff. So yes, if let's say we do keep it just in cash, invest in a money market, it's okay in the short term until we figure out what to do, but be careful not to just keep everything in cash for the long term. Not only is inflation going to erode most of that value, but you'll earn interest. Usually people think it's nice, I'm physically seeing interest paying into my account. But if you exceed the annual interest exemption, if you're under 65, that's 23,800 Rand. That extra amount gets added back to your income and taxed according to your marginal tax bracket. And it might just be that you inherited a large lump sum and now suddenly your income is in the top marginal tax bracket. Then you're almost losing 45% of that interest that you thought you were earning. So your after-tax return, you thought you were getting 8%, you're actually getting 5%. And now inflation comes into the equation as well. Now you're basically moving backwards. So that's one important component. You need a plan eventually of what you want to do. And taxes is always going to be a big one. So when you do create a plan, there's different tax vehicles, investment vehicles that you can choose that will be tax efficient. So we have a whole playlist on that as well. Where we talk about retirement funds and tax-free savings accounts. Even endowments might be a good idea at this space. Maybe some of that money you want to take overseas. So a lot of stuff to consider. So I think this is probably one of those things where it might not be the best route to just try and figure all of this out on your own. It might be worth it paying for good guidance and having good conversations to help you, because there's the technical side, again, the calculations. Someone can help you with that, but they also need to understand your situation. So different ways to approach it. It needs to make sense to you and your family, whilst also being tax and cost and fees efficient and all of that stuff that we always talk about. But it's not just about that. It's not just choosing the most tax and cost efficient vehicle that I can put my money in and never benefit from it, because then it's also, what's the point? So we need to understand the connection we have with that money, and then take some time to figure out what we want to do with it. And then once we are ready, make it as tax and cost efficient when we get to that point.
Yeah, I think that's a PowerPoint. I mean, I think you align it with what you want to do, what's really important to you, and then you make sure that all the decisions achieve those objectives. And I think people are so focused. If you do inherit money and you sit down with a tax person or an advisor or a estate lawyer or whatever it is, they're there to do a particular thing, and so they're going to focus on the most efficient outcome, and that can be so unfulfilling for the person on the other end of that advice. So it is important to know what you value, what your values are, and then to be clear with the person that you're talking to say, this is what's important to me. So don't give me the world's best tax advice, which is put everything in my retirement fund and I'll access it when I'm 65 one day, and then I'm going to live like a pauper between now and then. That might not work out for you. So just be clear, and then from there, make decisions that align. And I also just think it's one of those things where kind of making these decisions as in a process is also important, because I think often you can circle and circle and circle and get stuck, and that's no good as well. But taking a little bit of time, start with prioritizing, then get into a little bit more depth, go and check your priorities. Is this what I want to do? And then obtaining advice, taking a bit of time to think about it again, check that it aligns with your priorities, and then starting to implement decisions. I always think, if you've lost someone, dramatically, if it was a sudden death or an accident or something like that, it takes a long time to process that grief, and then making lots of very big decisions in a short space of time is bad. So I mean, I love your idea that you don't want to earn interest for the next decade. That's really lousy, but giving yourself a bit of time and freedom, good. Bit of process is good. If you're still watching this episode 10 years later and you still haven't pulled the trigger on any decisions, probably not so good.
Yeah, and earning so much money now, inheriting that lump sum, it's scary, because maybe you have not spend a lot of time learning about money, and now suddenly all of this lands in your lap. That's a massive, almost feeling a bit of imposter syndrome, even, like, what do I do with this? So it's a good time to start learning about money, reading books and having conversations. And if you do speak to someone that puts a plan in front of you, doesn't mean that's the best plan. So speak with many different people so that you always get to the point where you do make the decision that you feel comfortable within yourself. You've got peace that you're making an informed decision. Becoming informed will take time to learn and to spend time to learn about the basics of money. But if you can make an informed decision, it will hopefully bring some peace with what do I do with this money, and that will hopefully remove some of the negative feelings that we have with that. But yeah, I think the message we want to get across is, you do inherit money, it can evolve many different types of emotions. You first need to process the loss that connected that money to you, and then spend some time to make an informed decision as to how that money will best serve you and your family and your community, and expanding beyond that, because there's always going to be the theoretical. If you ask ChatGPT, it will give you probably the most tax and cost efficient way to then invest it, but that's not the full picture. That only comes at the back end of understanding how it should fulfill you and living a purposeful life.
I think that's us for the series. Really appreciate you watching, and thanks for all the comments. Our next series will be the last stage. So I know I'm biased because I'm about to start that stage, but it's the fun stage of your career, the last 15 years or so, and we'll talk through all the things that you should be thinking about and doing at that time. And then please give us your comments and your suggestions for future topics. There is so much we can talk about, but we want to know what you want to hear from us.
Yeah, and even let us know in the comments if there's anything specifically that maybe you were in that position where you inherited money, how you approached it, and share. I think that's what we're trying to build. It's also a community of like-minded people that wants to better themselves, that wants to learn about money and figure out this whole money game. I mean, we do it every day. We still don't have it figured out. So also allow yourself time to do so. And yeah, I'm excited about the next series, because that's now going to take it another step up, and then the game changes again. So every phase we have different things that we need to focus on. So I hope that you guys enjoyed this series, and we will leave links to all the other videos in the description that you can go and watch the rest if you want to. And hope to see you next time.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
The Honest Money podcast is brought to you by Prescient Investment Management. We consider everything to give you the advantage. It's the future of investing. Prescient Investment Management is an authorized FSP.